when it comes to inflation, when it comes in real estate, the narrative that is being pushed very heavily is that the housing market is very hot, and there's a lot of inflation going on, especially when it comes to those for home buyers or people who are looking to buy homes or looking to build a home. Of course, because of the price of lumber, which I discussed yesterday, how people are hoarding lumber, and of course, the United States politics and policies are, of course, are adding fuel to the fire by putting tariffs on the Canadian lumber coming in, which of course makes it more difficult because the narrative is that there is a shortage on lumber, and so Canada's like, well, we got some lumber. You guys really need some lumber, and so America's like, shoot, let's double those tariffs, and so that people feel less likely to want to sell us their lumber. And so for many people who are going out there and they're like, I'm just waiting for the housing market to collapse any minute now. Everything is so overpriced, waiting for my opportunity. And what many really don't realize is that it's the mega rich and the hedge funds and the big landlords that are ones that are going out there for all those distressed properties where you have the moratoriums, people aren't paying their rent. I think it's something like 25% of Americans have not paid their rent. And so it basically leaves it up to the landlord to basically fund and hopefully pay off that real estate so that when the moratorium ends, they'll be able to go and finally evict so that they can keep and put in someone who will actually pay the rent, because the government has basically said you cannot evict if the person just opts to not pay the rent. There's absolutely nothing that you can do, even to the point where there was a home buyer in California where the person sold the home, deposited the check into his bank account, and then just never moved out. And this went on for like 6, 7, 8 months where they just couldn't evict him. They went to the California lawmakers and they're like, I'm sorry, there ain't shit we can do for you because the law says you can't evict. And I'm like, but bro, he just sold me the home. And they're just like, shrug their shoulders. And basically the guy let the land deteriorate. And finally, after months and months and months, they were able to evict. But the whole time they were paying for the home. Not only were they paying for the home, but the guy let the land and the grass and everything deteriorate just to screw people over. It's like some people are just like that, and they're just like they're just miserable people, and they want to take advantage of the situation and cash in on a payday. Now, this is from the 21st, and it says mega landlords are snapping up Zillow homes before the public can see them. And so this is a lot of this news about why is it that there are all these, the people aren't even looking at the homes. They're just buying them up. They're paying overvalued them because a lot of that money is coming from the government, right? When the government is basically offering zero interest on the loans, well, then people will go in there, or big corporations, because you got to have good credit, right? More credit you have, the more money they're going to lend you. So instead of maybe you getting a couple of 100,000, these guys are getting into the millions and millions and tens of millions of dollars from the federal government, and they're snatching up your homes while you're busy staying at home waiting for a stimulus check. These people are just sitting there waiting for that moratorium to end. While you think the housing market is going to crash, of course, that is the narrative that they tell you, and prices are skyrocketing. There's no real estate on the market. Whatever little real estate there is getting snatched up. And of course, this is coming from Bloomberg. And of course, we have more coming out of the Wall Street Journal. It says if you sell a house these days, the buyer might be a pension fund, right? So for a lot of investors who invest in either REITs or, for example, a lot of these people who have pensions, those pensions need to be funded. And many of those pensions are not funded. And so one of the ways that they're looking to do it is they create a narrative of the housing market is going to crash, or they create distress within certain areas, right? And where they make the laws really crap, where they advocate maybe a little payoff here, a little payoff there. Somebody puts in a law that bans people from being evicted, or maybe they stir up the crowd and now there's riots in different areas and it makes certain areas completely shit to live in, and people are leaving. They're abandoning some of the most expensive cities like California and New York. And of course, a lot of this gets bought on the cheaps. And again, coming out of Wall Street, this is the suburban home buyer could be a foreign government. Overseas investors turn to America's single family rental. So when you think about, remember back when Trump was He was like, when they were offering stimulus checks, and no one ever talked about why are we sending all this money overseas? Where does it was like 30 billion here and 100 billion, tens of millions of dollars that went overseas in the bill that was signed in the one of the relief bills where they were sending out stimulus checks. And Trump said, I think it was only like 8 or 10% of that bill that was in the trillion, low trillions that actually went to the people. Most of that went to like silly things, right? People were showing it on Instagram or on Twitter, all these different funds. It was like, this museum is getting this on billions. This place is getting tens of millions. Tens of millions that went overseas. Some of that money ends up coming back. That's given to foreign countries, and they snatch up your real estate, right? So basically, you have foreigners that are snatching up a lot of the houses that are basically coming from America. And this is by no means something new. This has been happening, but y'all keep falling for the okie doke. This is back from 2013. It says your new landlord works on Wall Street. Hedge funds are snatching up rental homes at an alarming rate. This is 8 years ago, right? This is 8 years ago, but people stay falling for the same thing. People stay falling for the same thing. Again, coming out of Los Angeles Times, Wall Street scooping up homes for rent again as leasing prices outpace apartment rents. Right? So for a lot of those Airbnbers who were, they were buying 2 and 3 and they were putting them all on the books, were putting very little money down, and then they were just renting them out hand over fist. They were just like making money left and right. And a lot of these people on Wall Street, they were like, maybe we can benefit. It caused a little turmoil here and there, right? A little anarchy. Kind of when you think of it, when it comes to the lumber prices, I mean, how smart is it to have riots in one city after another, all these big businesses? And what was it that they were putting to cover their windows to avoid getting smashed? Wood, right? And so you have city riot after riot after riot, right? And city after city after city. All these businesses get forced to shut down. All these businesses forced to what? Board up all of their windows, which of course causes the price of lumber to rise. Right? So it's a really fine game that a lot of these people are basically playing upon the American people, but then they tell you it's all related to inflation, right? Because the government is printing all this money and it's all about inflation. Well, even Elon Musk is deciding to get into the game, and this came out as a 7. Elon Musk SpaceX is buying up a village in a Texas village, and homeowners are crying foul. Right, so everybody basically has their hand in the cookie jar, and some people who are wealthy, they're like, shit, why not? There's only a limited amount of land. They grab up all the real estate. Y'all sit out there waiting. I'm just waiting for the crash. Any minute now, the housing market's going to crash. Any minute now, right? Any minute now, the stock market is going to come Peter panning down, and we're all going to buy up the cheap stock. And I'm just sitting here like, bro, really? Y'all can't stay falling for the okie doke. Eventually, Americans have to catch on to what is going on. But unfortunately, at this point, it's too late. A lot of people are just sitting there. I mean, you hear people talking about gold's going to go to the moon, right? They're like, buy gold, make sure you buy that gold. And I'm just like, well, if people are so worried about inflation, why did you have this huge, like 25% sell-off in gold? You're getting a little bit of a rally now, but what's going on? I mean, if that was the case, right? I mean, you look at tech. The biggest thing that often is impacted by inflation, right? If people are worried that people are moving more into growth than they are into NASDAQ, but look at the NASDAQ. NASDAQ straight up in the air. NASDAQ keep on moving, and eventually we will make new highs. But of course, the narrative is the fear of inflation, right? But what it does do is it does cause wages to rise. And you're seeing a lot of these different businesses because people don't want to work. People don't want to work. And so businesses, you got like McDonald's offering iPhones. They're like, please just come for the interview. We'll give you $50. Some places are offering sign-on bonuses. And what that does, of course, is it causes wages to rise. And when wages rise, prices soar, because the companies aren't going to sit there and they're going to take the loss. The company's not going to take the L. You are. You're going to take the L. When you go to the supermarket, when you go food, when you go food shopping, when you go clothing shopping, you're the one that's going to pay the higher price. Not the business. These people know what they're doing. Eventually, you people got to wake up.